Hello everyone, this is the Pro Motors channel. Today we'll be repairing another engine. It's a V8 with two turbochargers. I'm still unsure if it's a 422 or 442, and I don't know the piston diameter yet. I'll check the plate when I take it apart, then everything will be clear. So my task now is to remove the gearbox. Let's go. Now I'm draining the oil. Let's see the amount of oil, the condition of the oil. As we can see, about 25 liters have drained out, which is normal. The oil seems to be without any shavings, at least nothing major. Visually, I don't see any shavings. There's no silver residue, and it looks like there's no emulsion either. The oil level is normal. Alright, my engine is ready to be disassembled. Now I'm going to take it apart and show the condition of the sleeves, piston rings, bearings and so on. We'll see what kind of shape it's in. I'll be drawing some conclusions. First, I'm removing all the attachments on top, the clutch, manifolds and pipes. Alright, so I removed the clutch. Let's inspect the flywheel. There's significant wear and a chipped area, so it definitely needs replacement. There are some pieces lying in the starter's compartment. It's not clear what they are. So the flywheel definitely needs to be replaced, and the bearing needs to be replaced too. The disc is in somewhat better shape, but if we're replacing parts, we should do everything, since it's already worn almost to the indicator. And the pressure plate. Apparently the pressure plate and disc were replaced separately at some point, but the flywheel wasn't changed. So now everything needs to be replaced completely. The flywheel, the pressure plate and the disc. Next, I'll remove the power steering pump. So the tabs on the pump are worn out, so we'll have to think about possibly replacing it. Alright, the washer is also worn out, so the washer needs to be replaced. Alright, let's check the turbine. And we can see that everything is covered in dust there. So it's possible that this engine was taking in dust. The dust was getting through without the air filter. Here we can see how much dust there is. So I removed the air collectors, and here's what I see there. It's very clear that there's dust in the air collector. You can see it right here. That is like this. I also checked this upper pipe that goes to the turbo. So I looked inside it as well. Something really terrible is happening here. There's a layer of dirt, not just a coating. It's several millimeters, about half a centimeter thick on the walls. It feels like they were driving without an air filter at all. If you look at the collectors themselves, you can also see that all the walls here, everything is covered in dust. This means that somewhere dust is getting in, bypassing the air filter. So either a hose is torn somewhere. All right, so I'll keep taking it apart now. I'm removing everything here in the front, the filters, this bracket here, and I'm taking off the fuel pump. Alright, so I've removed the heads. Let's take a look. First, let's check for wear. So the wear is pretty significant. You can catch it with your fingernail. That's the first thing. Second, we can see that the piston in the 8th cylinder is not the original one. It has a different combustion chamber, and on top of that, it's installed upside down. Alright, let's keep looking. The piston diameter is 128 millimeters. Let's look at the block. It's a 442 engine. So this is a 442 engine, 2 turbines. Piston diameter is 128 millimeters. All right, let's keep looking. The condition of the heads. Well, visually, the heads are in very good condition. They aren't corroded. The sump isn't corroded. So everything is in excellent condition. As I understand it, this side was opened. The 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th cylinders were opened. Here, the heads are cleaner and the gaskets are newer. Okay, let's see 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th. The heads here are also in good condition. I couldn't unscrew the injector in the 4th cylinder.
and not got crushed like this. I unscrewed all but the fourth one. I'll keep trying, pour something on it, tap it and try again. If it still doesn't work, I'll decide what to do next, based on the situation. Well, obviously the compressor needs to be overhauled. It's worn out too. So next I set the marks of the fuel pump. I aligned the movable and fixed marks. On the flywheel, I immediately set the mark. Just like that. You could see in the video that the engine was washed before disassembly. The engine was cleaned with a pressure washer at a car wash, high pressure. It was washed. On the outside, it seemed clean. Yeah. Let me show you. Filters, cylinder heads, manifolds, and turbines were all here. Basically, everything was set up this way. Now I'm showing you the condition of the washed engine. The engine after washing. No matter how hard you try, a stream of water won't reach here. And what kind of chemicals can remove this layer, this centimeter thick layer? What kind of chemicals? None. Now let me show you the layer of dirt here. I pushed the knife in up to its length. All of this is dirt, solid dirt. So, what kind of wash will clean this off? There should be a bolt somewhere around here. It's just not there. Why? Because this whole area, it's all dirt. This engine is mounted at the back of the bus where all the turbulence and dust collect. It's been there for about 10 years. It feels like it hasn't been removed for a long time. All right, that's it. Now I'm taking off the pump. I'm removing these fittings and turning the engine over. Also, I want to say this, as I'm taking it apart, some of the bolts are in such a condition that it feels like they're being unscrewed for the first time. The surface is shiny like it's factory new. So I wouldn't be surprised if I take the engine apart now and, for example, the bearings are still the original ones from the factory. There should be a date stamped on them. I think this engine is from, well, the early 90s, that's what I think. So it will be interesting if there's a date stamped on the bearing. For example, if it says 1991, that would mean this engine has never been rebuilt. It was running on its original bearings. Or, for example, the camshaft bushing, right? It's possible too. They might also have the year of manufacture marked on them. This engine may never have been fully overhauled or rebuilt. Let's say one piston was replaced at some point or something like that. Well, if they replaced the piston, that means they had to open up the oil pan. Here it is sealed with gasket maker. Maybe they also replaced the connecting rod bearings. We're mainly focused on the main bearings and camshaft bushings. It would be interesting if this engine is still from the 90s. I'm the first person to do a major overhaul on it. So I removed the fuel pump, and under the fuel pump there was a pile of dirt like this. The aluminum has oxidized. You can see it here. I'll show you the pump housing itself is even corroded. I don't know, I'll have to see how serious it is. I just want to show you how much dirt is under this pump. Everything is just overgrown. There's even a leaf here, an autumn leaf, so it's all completely overgrown. I don't know. The owner, the new owner of this bus, he doesn't know when the last repair was or what's going on with the engine at all. But judging by this, I don't know, it's been not just 1 decade, probably 10 or 15 years. All right, next. Now I'm showing the pump. Here are the plugs. They are kind of hammered in there, into the body. They should be recessed into the body. Let's keep looking. The closer you get to this side, the more they stick out. And here we can see that the plug here is sticking out by about 5 millimeters. There should be that much more of the body. Corrosion has eaten all of this away. So there's dirt here and water keeps getting in with dirt. And that's why you get this kind of corrosion here. We'll need to clean everything up and take a look. The absolute worst case is that we'll have to replace the pump housing. Maybe. Okay, moving on to the flywheel. So I took it off and checked. Here's my mark. And now I'm looking. I cleaned the scale and we can see it's set at, let's see, 15, well, somewhere around 12 degrees. And here are the pieces that were lying by the starter. Here they are. These are pieces of this rim right here. I start the engine, remove the oil pan and take out the pistons. the heat exchanger is not the original one, it's from TrackTech. They installed a new one. Maybe they put in a new one because the old one was corroded, or maybe it broke. The heat exchanger is in good condition. So now I'm looking at the bearings and I see that they all have thrust washers. Not just the last fifth one, but all 5 have thrust washers. I mean, in all my experience, I've never seen anything like this before. So now I'm going to remove a few main journals and see what this is all about. And at the same time, I'll check their condition. As I said before, I'm interested in the manufacturing date of these bearings. I loosened all main and rod bearings, and now the crankshaft is hard to turn. Here we see these kinds of bearings. That is, they all come with thrust bearings. I haven't seen these exact ones on engines like this before. On the 442s, I've never seen bearings like these. Interesting. In over 20 years of working, this is the first time I've seen something like this. Wow. We can see what a bad scoring this is. All right, now let's check the size. Okay, I see it's standard. It even shows the year of manufacture, 1997. All right, it's hard to see here. I'll record it on my phone. The camera isn't focusing. From what I see, it says 97, 442. Here's the emblem. Yes, the Mercedes one. So here's the Mercedes emblem. This is still the original bearing shell. So for sure, the bearing shells haven't been replaced yet. These are still the factory ones from 97. Well, I thought it was the early 90s, but it turns out it's already the end. So it's hard to guess how many miles this engine has done in 23 years if it's from a bus. It's hard to guess. Well, I'll say that these bearings have probably done at least 1 million miles. That's the minimum. And if you think about it, it's probably closer to 2 million. Our bus averages 500 kilometers daily and rarely sits idle with 2 drivers alternating. That totals 15,000 kilometers each month. That's about $200,000 a year. 2 million in 10 years, 4 million in 20. No, well, it clearly hasn't done 4 million. But at least 2 million these bearings have definitely done that, that's for sure. The most interesting thing is that I didn't see them as Mercedes bearings. I saw them as new, as if they had already been replaced. I mean, that's the condition they're in. Unbelievable. Let's take it apart and keep searching. Well, you can see that this block hasn't been machined. All the original numbers are there. The crank journal is solid. The block number. All right. And here we have the thrust bearing. The 5th main. That is, there's just a slight mark from the indicator on it. Well, that's the clutch on this side. All right. We take out the bearing shell and take a look. All right, you can see here as well, there's the Mercedes logo, the part number. It's standard and also from 97. Well, that's it. That's how it is. The bearing shells are still original factory ones installed at the factory. Even by the most conservative estimates, they've done 2 million kilometers. All right, I'm not removing the other main bearings for now. Now I'm taking out the pistons. Let's check the connecting rod bearings condition. What can I say? They're original and genuine too. Here's the original Mercedes logo. Not sure if it's visible on camera, so I'll record it on my phone and add the footage. So here we have the Mercedes logo, the catalog number, standard. And here it also says 97. These are also original inserts. All right, let's look at the pistons. The Mercedes logo, so it's an original piston. No scoring or anything major. Visually everything looks good, but now we need to measure, check, and clean it.
This side also has scratches. So, and there's another piston in about the same condition. Here, everything is scratched up to the head. I measured the piston rings. The gap is over 5 millimeters. The wear is about 6 or 7 millimeters. There's such a ridge that the piston can't pass through. So the top ring was getting jammed.
So, one of the sleeves wouldn't come out. I just couldn't get it out because there's a lot of wear right here. And the ring just gets stuck on this one spot. I couldn't knock the piston out, so I had to knock it out together with the sleeve. And I measured the gaps on it. So here the gap is about 3 or 4 millimeters, I guess. This is the oil scraper ring, and you can see that its edges are all worn down. It's almost smooth now. The compression ring. So I'll even measure it with a caliper. Well, it's 5 millimeters, 4.5 millimeters. That's the gap in the compression ring. And that's even considering that I'm measuring in a spot where there's no wear from the rings. Okay, it's not quite accurate for me to measure here. Well, something like this, I take it out and check. 6 millimeters. That's the gap in the compression ring. So this is all dust. Dust gives results like this, like sandpaper. It wears down the rings like sandpaper. That's what happens. The ridge, I'm not sure if you can see it.
Well, here I think you can see it. So it's literally, well, a millimeter, probably, if not more.
There are scratches there. You can see it's all cut up and the piston has similar marks. These sleeves, if you look at them, they're not in the best condition either.
I'll suggest to the owner to install a new piston assembly. I don't know what we'll think about it. Measure and clean everything first. Now, I'm removing the non-original piston, the different one. Honestly, the feeling from the engine is kind of mixed. At first glance, I thought it was just scrap metal, but after taking it apart, I found some parts inside were actually in perfect condition. I don't get how they run so far and are still in this condition. But judging by the sleeves have definitely seen a lot of use. Alright, let's take a look at the bearing. The most interesting part is they replaced the piston but kept the same bearings, just switching their positions. This one should be in the connecting rod, but it's in the cap. So what do we have here? We have a tube that fell out here. It's clear why it fell out. The piston is installed the wrong way. That is, it's positioned like this. Accordingly, the tube, the oil nozzle, it's positioned at the bottom. This is how it's positioned. And accordingly, the piston should have been installed like this. This notch here is specifically for this oil nozzle. The piston was installed like this. He broke this tube. And accordingly, the piston isn't in the best condition either. It's not an engine, just a bunch of mysteries. Alright, I'm taking out the crankshaft, the camshaft, checking the bushings, the seals, and so on. So the main bearings took more damage, right? So there are these kinds of scuff marks here. It feels like there was oil starvation, right? And this scuff mark here, something scraped it, maybe some metal shavings got in. Well, this one is a bit better. Yeah. The first and second are better. This one has the biggest scuff mark. Let's take a look at the crankshaft. I can't feel anything by touch. Of course, I'll measure everything and check it visually. The crankshaft is perfect. This is Mercedes. It's from 1997. It's been working for 23 years, right? I'm removing the original bearings and the shaft is still perfect. Well, of course, I'll measure it, but you can see it right away. If there's any wear, you can spot it immediately. The owner can't say the mileage because he doesn't know. He just bought this bus. Well, I think this engine has done about 2 million kilometers because it's a bus. In 23 years, yeah, it's definitely done 2 million. Condition really surprises me, of course. Well, and here this piston isn't sitting right anymore. Yeah, that's it. I've done something before selling it. I'm taking out the crankshaft now. Basically, there's no way to know the full history of this engine now. According to the owner, he doesn't know if it was repaired or not. With my experience, as much as I have, I can say that the bearings haven't been changed. They're still the factory ones. So this engine hasn't been worked on yet. This is its first major overhaul. So, visually, the condition of the camshaft is just perfect. Of course, I'll measure the height of the lobes, but visually, it's just in perfect condition. I'm checking to see if there's any kind of brand mark on it, to see if it's been replaced. No. Alright, let's check the pushers. There are no issues with the pushers. The pushers won't be replaced. Alright, now I'll knock out one camshaft bushing. Let's see what's written on the bushing. Well, here it is, 98th year. January 98. So that means the engine definitely hasn't been worked on even once. The bushings are already crumbling. As you can see there, they definitely need replacement. So I also want to record these dates on my phone. Here you can see the camshaft bushing. It's from 98. So it's still the original one from the factory. And this is the condition it's in now. Here you can see where it started to crumble. Next, this is the bushing, and then the main bearing shell. Look, it's standard with the Mercedes logo. This is definitely an original bearing shell. Look, it's from 1998. There you go. 1998 now. Let's check the connecting rod bearing shell. 1998. So this happens quite often with these engines. Coolant leaks into one spot and you get this kind of corrosion. It's present on all sleeves. Let's check the sleeve with a non-original piston. Let's take a look. You can see that it's not really that rusty. In other words, its condition is better. And here we see the BF mark. We see the BF mark. That means these are Turkish parts. So, the seat for the rubber seals is in perfect condition, in very good shape. I actually really like it compared to my previous engine, for those who haven't seen how I struggled with it. So the rubber seals are in pretty good condition. You can also see that the rubber seals have stuck so much that they've practically grown in there. But they're still good. You can really feel that they're not hardened or falling apart. They're actually in good shape, even though they're already so covered with scale, rust and deposits. The rubber seals are good. So let's sum it up. So the engine's condition is pretty good. Its only problem is, well, except for the fact that this fourth piston here, it's unclear who did what with it, why it was replaced, why it's different, why it's installed incorrectly. I don't know. Those are the kinds of questions I have. That's it. If we don't take these last, let's say, repairs into account, the overall condition of the engine is actually very good. Its only problem is, of course, dust. The dust that got into the intake manifold. So now we'll be looking around, checking maybe there's a torn hose somewhere. Basically, we need to take a look. That's its problem.
because of this, it wore out all the sleeves and all the rings. The pistons, of course, got damaged too. Well, dust and shavings are circulating through the whole oil system, so the bearings are suffering as well. Basically, everything is getting damaged for its age. It's in very good condition. So what will be done? Well, naturally, one injector will be replaced. As we can see, the piston was installed incorrectly and broke the oil injector. That's okay, it's a minor thing. One injector will be replaced. Next, naturally, the camshaft bushings will be replaced. The lifters will stay the same. The lifters are in good condition. You could say perfect. The lifters will stay the same. Next, I will talk to the owner about getting a new piston assembly. I will advise him that a new piston assembly should be installed because there's no point in replacing 3 pistons and leaving the rest old. We need to replace 8 sleeves, all the rings, all the seals, and at least 3 pistons. But why leave the other 5 old pistons? I don't see the point. The crankshaft visually is in excellent condition. There will be, of course, more measurement. I'll measure it. Yes, from experience, I can already tell it's in perfect condition. The only thing is this ring here, of course, needs to be replaced under the oil seal. You don't even need to clamp it in the machine for polishing. It's already in perfect condition. I just wash it, wipe it, blow it out. That's it. I don't expect any issues with the camshaft. It's in perfect condition. The bushings will be replaced. I'll recommend new pistons, but these are in good condition and can be kept as spares. They can be used elsewhere. Moving on. Well, accordingly, all the bearings will be new. I'll clean and check the block myself, check all the connecting rods. The bearings will be new, both main and rod bearings. New pistons. Next, the cylinder heads. I'll take the heads apart and inspect them. That's a given. I might need to lap the valves, maybe ream them, maybe replace the guides, maybe the valve stem seals. That's clear. And most likely I'll send them to a surface grinder. Although that's not certain, I'll have to see. The injectors, of course, will go in for repair, so I think the nozzles will need to be replaced. Well, I'll clean them and send them for testing. Most likely the nozzles will be replaced. Moving on. About the fuel pump. Of course, there are some questions about the fuel pump. Here's its corrosion right here. Look how it's been eaten away. The plugs are really sticking out. Maybe it's not serious, I might be able to fix it. You can just cover all this up with cold welding. It'll be visible. I also think the pump needs to be put on a test bench. At the very least, check it. At most, replace the plunger pairs, valves, and so on. Alright, next, the clutch needs to be replaced, the disc, the pressure plate, the flywheel, all of that needs to be replaced. The turbines too. I haven't looked at them yet. Well, visually there is some play. And look at all that dust I was talking about. You can see the play on the impellers. But that's all. We'll decide later. Right now I don't know what we'll do with them. Maybe there will be new ones. Maybe both turbines will be new, which would be ideal. So what else? Naturally, everything needs to be cleaned. I might overhaul the pump, the compressor. The compressor will be repaired. That's the work we have. I've covered and checked everything. This is a preliminary overview. I'll start the assembly by installing the oil nozzle. If you watched the disassembly, there was a piston in the 8th cylinder that was installed incorrectly and it broke this tube. Now I'm installing a different oil nozzle. Next I'm installing the heat exchanger. I prepared, washed, cleaned it, removed the radiator and blew everything out inside. I'm taking a new gasket and applying sealant. The sealant is Corteco. So the heat exchanger is installed. Next, I'll replace the camshaft bushings. Alright, the bushing is in place. Let's take a look. Here's one oil channel. It supplies oil from the crankshaft directly to lubricate the camshaft. And here's the second oil channel. This one goes from the camshaft to lubricate the fuel pump. We can see that both channels are aligned. Everything is fine, and so on. Alright, we can see the camshaft bushings are in place. And now let's check the oil channels once again. We can see they're there. They're there. They're there. They're there. I've checked the first bushing. Now I turn the engine, pack the pistons, and install the sleeves. So, our pistons are Neural. It's a good brand, I've installed it many times. I've already taken this piston out and checked it, its size and everything, to make sure it's the right piston size. So here in the set we have the wrist pin, circlips and piston rings. I'll mark each piston and cylinder liner, starting with this one. This is the first cylinder liner and piston. That's so I don't confuse which piston is from which cylinder liner. Here's how it arrives. The piston is already inside the cylinder liner, already with the piston rings on. So we see the piston's rings are already installed on it, and the piston pin is inserted. I immediately mark that this will be the second cylinder liner, the second piston. Check the weight of the pistons. I checked the weight of the pistons. All the pistons with the pin, rings and retainers weigh 3,510 grams. Everything is fine. I use Erling for the seals under the liners as usual. So I'm measuring all the adjustment rings, but they're standard for me. They all should be 0.15, but I'll check anyway. And I'll measure all the liners, the height of the flange. The ring's thickness is 0.15. All my rings are 0.15, now I'm measuring the flange height. The flange height is 0.91, well, it can vary from 0.90 to 0.92. I'll measure all the sleeves now. This one is 0.92. I've checked every sleeve, they're all 0.91 or 0.92. So now I'm installing the adjustment rings without the rubber seals, and I'm installing the sleeves without the rubber seals. Then I measure the protrusion of the sleeve. I've installed all the sleeves, tightening the sleeve with bolts. And now I'm measuring the protrusion of the sleeve. As you can see, the block is at 0 and the needle has moved to 8. Well, it's about 7.5, 800ths. 9 is the maximum possible protrusion. So I check it in 3 planes like this, 0.8. All right, let's see. 0.8. 0.8, the normal range is from 300ths to 9. These 2 cases have been checked. I'm checking the next ones. Zero. 8. Let's keep looking. 0. It shows 7. 0, 7. I checked the case protrusion. All cases stick out equally, about 7 or 8 hundredths, which is very good. I'm taking out the cases, adding the rubber rings and starting installation. The seating areas for the rubber rings in this block are in very good condition. I'll just coat the rubber rings with a special grease, a special gel. I also apply this paste to the sleeve. All mounting points and sleeves are coated. I'm installing them. Alright, the sleeves are in place. Now I'm turning the block over again and will install the crankshaft. I already prepared the crankshaft. I've already filmed the footage. Now I'll insert the footage of preparing the crankshaft. I clamped the crankshaft in the machine, removed the counterweights and polished it a bit. After polishing, I'll check the size. So I take the micrometer. I checked it against the template for 0. We see 0. The 5th main journal is 103.99. The 4th main is 103.99. The 3rd main is 103.98 and a half. The 2nd main is 103.99. The 1st main is 103.98. I also removed the ring under the oil seal. The ring will be new. I'm also taking the micrometer. I'm comparing it to the template, and as we see, it's at 0. 4th connecting rod. Let's take a look. 89.99. I'm checking at the... Well, I'm showing the most worn spot to the camera. Usually the top and bottom. I'm checking in 2 more planes. 3rd connecting rod. 89.99. 2nd connecting rod. 89.98. First connecting rod, 89.90. Almost 99. The crankshaft is perfect. I polished it a bit, measured it, and it's at the perfect size. I replaced the thrust washer under the oil seal. What else did I do? I blew out all the channels so the crankshaft is ready. Next, I need to install the tappets before putting it in the block, since it's harder to do later. I coated the hole for the tappets with oil, and now I'm installing them. The cover has been washed and cleaned. I also want to show that the bearings are still in place during disassembly as shown before. That is, all the bearings, not just this thrust one on the 5th main, but all the main bearings that are in the caps, they all had these kinds of stops. I'll also show you here, it says 170298. So as I said, this is a 1998 engine. Here are the original bearings still in place. We've checked and found these bearings are no longer produced. The marks across and up to 90 degrees at the gate. The marks are aligned. Alright, so the side tie rods are tightened as well. The main bolts are tightened. That's it, the crankshaft is fully tightened. And this is how it turns for me. That is, it has longitudinal movement. And this is how it turns for me. That is, it's easy. I push it, and it keeps going by itself. It's perfect, just as it should be. You can feel it, it moves so smoothly on the oil. The oil holds it from all sides. It's not tight or pinched anywhere, and there's no looseness either. You can feel that the entire space is filled with oil. You can feel all of this with your hand. Overall, it's excellent. Next, I need to attach the pistons to the connecting rods and then install them. So, first I need to put the camshaft back in place. I also measured the camshaft. The cam lobes are in perfect condition. The bearing journals are also perfect. Here I've lubricated the bushings with oil.
Okay, we can see that the timing marks are aligned. Here's the mark on the crankshaft, and here are the two marks on the camshaft, and this is how they rotate together.
So we can see that the crankshaft has made one full rotation. The camshaft has made half a rotation.
Again, the crankshaft has completed a full rotation and the camshaft half rotation, so the timing marks are aligned.
All right, the shafts are in place. Now I'll work on the pistons. So I'll continue with the assembly. Yesterday I went and picked up the connecting rods. I had sent them in to have the bushings replaced. So they changed the bushings, pinned them on a lathe and fitted them. So this is how it looks right now. So now I'm going to assemble the pistons. Here are my pistons. I kept them in a box so dust and dirt wouldn't get on them. So I also picked up the fuel pump yesterday. I got the injectors back from repair. And the nozzles on the injectors were replaced. Here you can see the old nozzles, and these spacers were also replaced. The intermediate rail, it was replaced because of wear. Here, if you look closely, you can see the wear where the needle rests, and it's already quite significant, a big amount of wear. Next, here are all the injectors. I won't name the company. Maybe I'll make a deal with them about advertising someday, but I really like the quality of their work. Even the finished injectors are packed and sealed in bags so that no dirt gets in. Nothing at all. I think this shows their level, or as often happens, when you get them from a fuel technician, not only are they not sealed, they're all covered in oil, dirt and dust. So that's the difference in level. Yeah, well, I can say the same thing about repairing the fuel pump. If you remember, the housing here was separated. That's why I was a bit concerned. So they said it's nothing serious, they just hammered the plugs in a bit deeper. Apparently, they also glued them in place. They said there won't be any problems here. They cleaned it all up too. It's really well cleaned. At least I like the way it looks. So the plunger pairs were replaced. The delivery valves were replaced too, all 8 of them. And the springs were replaced as well. Well, of course, there were also some minor things like various gaskets, the regulator kit, and so on, all sorts of sealing rings. We can see that everything is marked with paint. So I also like the condition of the pump. We'll see how it performs in operation, how it will show itself. Right now I'm removing the fuel equipment and working on the pistons. I'm installing the pistons onto the connecting rods and then installing the pistons into the block. I oil the piston. I oil the connecting rod and bushing. Just like this. Just by hand. He comes to see me. Next, I put the ring back in place. I check the second ring. All right, one is done. Okay, now let's finish assembling. The second one is done.
pistons are already on the connecting rods. Next, I'm installing MIBA bearings as usual. Sputter with a turbocharged engine. The bearings must be sputter. We can see that one bearing is a regular one. The other bearing has the sputter standard marking. So the bearing with the sputter marking is the one we install in the connecting rod. The regular bearing, the one without any marking, is installed in the connecting rod cap. The bearings are installed. Also, I want to mention that it is essential to measure the bolts as usual, but I've already measured all of them. So, as we can see, the height is about 68.1. Bolts can be used up to 68.5. An important point, these are specifically connecting rod bolts. Alright, my pistons are ready for installation. I'm starting. I've tightened the connecting rod bolts and the marks at 90 degrees and along the length. So next I'm installing the counterweights. The counterweights are also washed, cleaned and prepared. I'll be installing the bolts and applying thread locker to the threads. I've installed and tightened the counterweights to 90 degrees, aligning the marks along the length. The crankshaft is fully installed and tightened. Main bearings, connecting rod counterweights and axial play are finished. It turns easily and moves smoothly. All is good. I'm closing the rear and front covers now and plan to close the oil pan today. So let me tell you a bit about the covers and what was done. The front cover was simply washed and cleaned. I chased and tapped the threads, then cleaned out the dirt. The oil seal was replaced, an acrylic rubber one without a spring. The front cover is now ready for installation. Next, the rear cover with the casing. First, everything was washed and cleaned. I chased the threads. Here we can see that the crack has started. The sealant was applied here and the crack appeared. That means it started to chip off when it was tightened. Previously, the oil pan was taken off and heavily sealed.
anymore and this cap might have broken, but it's holding on tight. I checked it and used the tap to remove all the dirt and old sealant from there. So, good original factory studs were installed, Mercedes ones. There were some strange bolts here before. It's not clear what was done. I installed good studs and good nuts. Then I prepared the mounting spot for the starter. It was all corroded here, so I cleaned it. Next, I also replaced the seal with the same kind, an acrylic rubber one, the type without a spring. That's the only kind I use. They're the best seals. The compressor was overhauled. Here are the old parts. The cylinder was completely replaced. This is the piston rings. The pin was replaced and the bearing too. The crankshaft bushing and bearings were replaced. This is the condition of the bearing that goes on the connecting rod. The valves were replaced. Also, the valves had been installed incorrectly. Apparently, someone had opened it before. Here, you can see the plate and the broken exhaust valve. There should be a washer here. It was missing and the plate was just tightened too much, so it was done incorrectly. That's why it broke. I also remade two studs. Basically, I made two studs out of good German bolts and tightened everything up. I've prepared the cylinder head, but won't install it yet since it'll be in the way. I'll put it on once it's in place. I also cleaned out all the threads on this side. There was a lot of dirt here, a lot of old sealant and so on. So that's a brief summary of what was done with the covers and the housings, and now I'm starting the installation. Before installing the housing, we check the marks again, meaning we look to see that we have a dot on the crankshaft and two ones on the camshaft. That's it. We see that they are aligned. We put on the gaskets. Next, I install the front cover, apply sealant and position it. The oil seal is installed using the guide that comes with the seal. Also, remember the surface where the oil seal sits should not be oiled. These seals must never be lubricated. Next, I will immediately install the flywheel, but I want to mention that lately, for some reason, flywheels have been coming without this thrust washer. Be careful. You might install it straight out of the box without the washer. I'm installing the washer first now. The washer is in place and has cooled down. The heat quickly transferred to the flywheel. So I also installed a new bearing. I'm installing the bearing right away, because lately, for some reason, the flywheels have often been defective, meaning this bearing just slips right through. That's why as soon as they brought it without the camera, I immediately installed a new bearing to check. Alright, the flywheel is ready, the bearing is installed, and the washer for the oil seal is in place. Now I'm checking right away for the presence of the scale marks.
because I once had a case where the flywheel didn't have a scale. I'm about to install the clutch and want to wipe the greasy flywheel with solvent. Well, I'll remove it, it's better off without it. Next, I'm installing the clutch. I'm checking the disc for runout before installing it. We can see there's a little bit, but it's within the acceptable range. I remember that I have a new primary shaft. Usually I use a mandrel for installation, but to make it more precise, I'll use the primary shaft. Alright, that's it. The clutch is in place, the clutch is installed. Next, I'll close the oil pan and install the oil pump. The oil pan is ready, washed, wiped, blown out and degreased. But first I need to take apart the oil pump. So here I have the oil pump number 43. This one is already high power. This one's already installed and appears to have been replaced. The brand is Paul Bernard. In the head pressing video I showed cylinder heads from this brand and they lasted 2 or 3 years. A microcrack foam causing coolant to mix with oil had PB brand cylinder heads on hand. I mean, I know that this brand exists, but it doesn't mean much to me. I see it very rarely. So now we're going to take the pump apart and check its condition. So we can see that the pump is in good condition. The gears haven't even developed a mirror finish yet, which means it was replaced not too long ago. We'll leave everything as it is. I'll put the cover back on and reinstall the pump. I'm installing the pump and a new pressure relief valve. Alright, so I'm installing the oil pan. I've applied sealant here, applied sealant to the engine block, taking the gasket and installing the oil pan. All right, that's it. The oil pan is installed and tightened. This is how the engine looks now. I'm continuing the assembly. I had the cylinder head surface ground and brought them back. Here's how they look now. So, what's my next task? My task is to pressure test the cylinder heads and check the water jacket for leaks. So now I'm marking them. Well, they're already marked, but now I'm using a marker for clarity. I'm testing the 8-cylinder head. As you can see, I applied pressure again and I'm waiting for it to drop to at least 2. It's already dropped to 2 and there are no bubbles, so everything is fine. Now I'm turning the head 90 degrees and checking again. We can see that it dropped again to 2 atmospheres. There are no bubbles, so I've checked the 8th head. We conclude that it's airtight. That's it. Now I'm putting on the 7th one and so on. Checked all 8, everything, including the water jacket, is airtight. And now, so I don't have to work with these greasy cylinder heads. Since they're all in antifreeze right now, they're greasy, and besides I haven't washed them after grinding, so there's still some shaving, sandpaper and abrasive left in there. I'm going to put them in the washer and rinse again before assembly. The cylinder heads are washed again and the valves are cleaned and prepared. Now I just need to assemble the heads and lap the valves. While disassembling, I labeled each cylinder head. This is the first head and its valves. So, what am I going to do now? I will check the condition of each seat, look at the working surface of each valve, and make a decision. Some valves, I will just, for example, the second cylinder, we can see that has a good shine, no pitting. Here, too, the seat looks like it's in good condition. No pitting, nothing is damaged. Everything is excellent. So I just apply some paste and lap it a little right on the spot. Here, for example, the 7th head, the condition of the seats is good, but the condition of the valves, let's say, is not so great. You can see the pitting on the 7th valve, on the exhaust one. So I'll be setting it into the bevel now, clamp it in the machine and grind the bevel a little. Only after that will I lap it. That's my current scope of work. Let's begin. So, starting with the first head, I first make the seats a bit narrower, the working bevel. I've made the working bevel narrower. Now I'm lapping the valves. So we can see a mat track has formed all the way around. We can see the seat, it also has a smooth, even mat track all the way around. That's it, my valve is lapped. That's it. One head is lapped. Now I'll lap all the others the same way. The valve is lapped and I'm assembling the head right away. First, let's lay out the washers. The small ones. Next, I'm installing the valve stem seals. Now I grab the large washer. Alright, the first cylinder head is ready for installation, fully assembled and cleaned. The injector is cleaned and blown out as well, even until the first cylinder head is ready and so on. I've reached the 7th cylinder head. Now I'll show you what I'm going to do with this valve that has pitting. On some valves, I remove the chamfer and restore the surface, then grind and lap as usual. Now I'm installing the cylinder heads, starting with the guide bushings. If you remember, when disassembling, the pistons had flat combustion chamber tops. Now you can see these pistons have a pin. That is a deflector. Let me explain. Those pistons are the old type, the original Mercedes ones. they aren't produced anymore. So this means I've tightened this head. You can see all the marks are lined up along the engine and so on. I tighten all the other heads as well. That's it, the main work is done. The hardest part, you could say, now I'll be installing the injectors, the pump, adjusting the valves and so on. the rocker arms are tightened, you'll adjust the valves. To adjust the valves, I need to bring the first cylinder. Here's our first cylinder to top dead center on the compression stroke, not on the exhaust stroke, on the compression stroke. So for that, I turn the crankshaft clockwise until the intake valve operates. And after the intake valve operates, I find top dead center on this cylinder. You can find it by the injector, or rather by the piston. You can also find it by the flywheel, by the degrees. So here we see my mark that I made for installing the pump. I still need to turn it a bit more. Here you can see that I got 0,1 top dead center. But still, I think I'll do it like this now. I'm going to put the pulley on now. I didn't put the pulley on before because I didn't have the rubber seal here for the plug. Now I'll hammer this plug into place and put the pulley on. And then I'll make my marks on the pulley. This isn't required, but it's how I do it, and it sometimes helps. Here's the plug. It's like this, it got a bit damaged too. Corrosion ate it up. Well, here's a new gasket. Now I'll put in the new gasket, seal it with some sealant, and everything will be fine. Alright, the plug is in place. Now I'm installing the pulley. Alright, the pulley is tightened. Now I'll make some marks on it. This is my 0, top dead center. I'll also set 14 degrees for installing the high pressure fuel pump. This is my top dead center with the first cylinder at top dead center on the compression stroke. Now I can adjust the valves. Here I have top dead center, compression stroke. Now I can adjust them in order, first, second, fourth, fifth, and so on. That is the first, second, fourth, fifth, and so on. That's it, the first cylinder is adjusted. I won't show the whole process. The valves are now adjusted. I've set the ignition timing marks. I'll set it to 14 degrees. Maybe 12 to 14 depending on the play. I'll see how it goes. I'll set it somewhere in this range, from 12 to 14. So, I'll also make a 14-degree mark on the pulley here. These marks aren't really necessary. I'm just putting them here, you could say, for clarity for the video. Well, sometimes they even help out on the groove. I mean, if you need to check the ignition and don't want to mess around in a dirty groove somewhere, you can just look here. And I'll also put a mark on the camshaft to show that this is the top dead center compression stroke. It won't hurt to have it here. Sometimes it's actually needed. Sometimes when setting the ignition or pump, you don't want to open the valve cover just to check if it's the compression or exhaust stroke. That's it. It won't get in the way here. And if someone knows about it, even from the video, you never know. The owner might need it in the future. He'll just look at the camshaft, and if this mark is there, it means top dead center on the first cylinder during the compression stroke. That is exactly for installing the fuel pump. Alright, that's it. Aiki, I'm done with the pulley. I'm done with the valves. Next, I'll be installing the injectors and then the fuel pump. Aiki. Now I'm installing new washers, new injectors, and new nuts. Alright, first I'm installing the washers. All right, the injectors are in place. Here's how it looks now. All right, the injectors are done. Now I'm installing the fuel pump. I've already marked the timing top dead center at 14 degrees. That's it. Now I can install the pump. So the engine is already set up. Of course, all the threads here have been cleaned with a tap. Everywhere. That is all of these. Well, every single thread, absolutely every thread on the whole block was cleaned with a tap. I took out a lot of dirt, sealant, and so on from there. Pump is back from repair regarding corrosion. So they just hammered the plugs in a bit deeper and basically everything turned out well here. Here it sticks out by a few millimeters, but that's not a problem. Everything is fine. So next I put the new rubber gasket on with super glue. And I also put on this big sealing ring, which is also new. What else do I want to show? I'll now show the gear's condition. No marks from the vice jaw, so the gear wasn't clamped. Can it be done this way? Yes. Last time I had a video. Last time I showed how this gear is clamped in a vise and what condition the teeth are in afterwards, how they get deformed, and so on. Alright, next I line up the mark and install the pump. I match the moving and fixed marks. And now I'll also unscrew these 3 lower bolts. Just in case there's a misalignment, so I can fine-tune the ignition. As usual, I sealed the mounting surface. Alright, I've tightened the pump. Let's check. My marks haven't moved. I shouldn't have loosened those bolts. Now I'm tightening them and the pump is installed. Everything's good. The pump is tightened. I marked each bolt I tightened so I wouldn't miss any. Alright, I'll close this cover now so nothing falls in. I'll just close it and that's it. So I applied sealant and I'm putting on the gasket and closing it up. Next, I'll be installing the valve covers. I had the surface machine because it was a bit warped. I leveled it and checked it on a flat plate. Now it's perfectly even. I take the gasket and install it. All right, the valve covers are on. We can see that this cover isn't original. It's the kind of casting they used on the 402 engine. I don't know why there's a non-original cover here. All right then. Okay, so when I was taking it apart, I noticed that there's something strange going on here with the water pipes. That's how things were done here. It's unclear what it is, how or why. You can see the cylinder was replaced. So as you can see, this tube was pressing against the block, and at this spot it was pressing against the head, like this. They tried to tighten it in every way, using polytetrafluoroethylene tape and even wrapping it with something else. Apparently it was still leaking here anyway, because all of this was done incorrectly. I just ran into this now and thought, how am I supposed to put all this back in place? So, what did I decide to do? I decided to remove the air-cooled cylinder and install a water-cooled cylinder. Supply will enter from the top through the head, and the outlet will be here. Here I have the original tube that should be installed here. This is how it will be positioned, and the supply will go directly into the cylinder. I'll just redo it now, that's all. Alright, so I changed the cylinder, installed water cooling, now it will be more reliable and better. And I put in the tube that should be there. Here nothing gets in the way, nothing interferes, and there's nothing you need to cut. Next I'm installing the head, closing the cover and attaching the tubes, essentially assembling everything here. Now I need to unscrew this fitting and put in a plug. Alright, I'm installing the upper tube and leaving it unchanged. The head is installed and the tubes are in place. Now I'm installing the return hose and cutting pieces, each 25 centimeters long. I'm leaving these hoses a bit longer, they'll go right around here to the return line and pump. Two plugs are installed here. That's it, the return line is in place. Now I can install the air manifolds. So the manifolds were cleaned from the inside, all the dust was washed out. This is how they look now. So we've returned to the air manifolds for now. Let me show you that there's no dust in there, everything is clean. And I want to record another moment like this. In the previous episode during disassembly, people wrote in the comments that it's not dust, that it's soot settled on the walls. I want to show exactly where he took the dust from the air pipe, and right here it just delaminated. Look at this hole. I'll put a flashlight in there now so you can see it better. It can take in air more easily here and does so whenever possible, rather than pulling air through the resistance of the air filter. That's why there was dust in the air manifold, because of this cracked pipe.
I kept meaning to film it, but I kept forgetting.
So accordingly, this pipe needs to be replaced. Alright, next I'm installing this bracket. I put in new rubber mounts here, applied some sealant, and now I'm installing it. Next, I'm installing the water pump. I didn't rebuild the pump because it was replaced with a new one 6 months ago. So I just washed it, cleaned it, and now I'm installing it. Next, I'm installing the oil filter housing. I put in new gaskets, new rubber seals, applied a bit of sealant, and got the washers ready. I'm installing the new filters now. So I immediately connected the fittings and put all the hoses in place. I annealed the new washers. This is how I temporarily attach the return line. I'll check again after installation and may trim it. Now I'm installing the intake manifold. Alright, I've installed it like this. I'll tighten it later after I connect this hose. It might turn a little to the right or left. Next, I'm installing the jumper between the air collectors. Next, I'll work on the turbochargers. So the turbochargers were sent for testing on the stand. They checked them on the stand and said that everything is fine with them. They're not leaking oil, which is most important. Well, when I took them apart, you could see there was dry dust, but there was no oil, so that's good. They just cleaned it, sandblasted it, and that's it. They removed the stud somewhere here. I'll check it now. So I have these kinds of repair kits for the turbo. I'll check now what's inside it too. I see there are studs, nuts, gaskets, and so on. I've cleaned the manifolds a bit here. Now I'll blow them out and install the turbos. Let's go. So we can see that on one turbo the studs were removed, but on the other they weren't. Well, I probably won't do that either, though it's not clear how to install it here. Alright, let me take a look here. I think the nut was right up to this thread, and this thread can just be cut off. Touching them now is pointless. You'll just break them and won't be able to unscrew the studs. Alright, I'm going to try now, check things out and put it together. Let's see how it turns out. I've installed the studs and identified my turbo and its origin. I replaced just one stud since the nut fits here. The thread is fine. I prepared the flanges. Since they were cut off during removal, I'll likely need to weld here. Well, I've prepared the flange. I trimmed it a bit like this. Everything here was corroded. I also prepared the manifolds, cleaned everything up. I rethreaded here too. The studs are still good. Next, what do I need to do? I need to replace all these seals. These are for the oil drain, and these seals are for the air supply to the manifolds. Okay, I need to clean here first. I'll do it now. Next, I'm installing the exhaust manifolds. I installed the bracket. From what I understand, the air conditioner, compressor and engine are mounted on it. It's mounted on the same mounts. Most interestingly, when I unscrewed it, there were just these two bolts and one short bolt, which I replaced with a longer one. I don't know, maybe they unscrewed them when they were removing it, but these bolts here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, none of these bolts were there. I don't know, I screwed them in, found 6 bolts at home, screwed them in. That's it. Okay, moving on. I immediately installed the mount. It's a new mount. I install it right away. I'm not tightening it yet since I need to align the studs with the holes on side. I installed the gasket and used special assembly paste inside the manifold. I replaced this drain gasket, but I'm not tightening it yet. I also installed this drain channel here. Now, I'm installing the turbocharger. Next, I'll install the second turbocharger. I installed the turbocharger and tightened everything. It all fit and went in nicely. This is the drain from one turbocharger. It fit well. Here's the drain from the second turbocharger.
Here, the turbocharger is installed.
I installed this air manifold. It's cleaned inside as well. I also installed this pipe for the air intake on the compressor. There was a plain elbow with a thread here. I don't know how it got here or who put it in. I found an old threadless elbow at my place. But still, the pipe is a bit bent. It should be at a 45-degree angle here. Maybe there was a tube here before, so I'll leave it as is. I can't come up with anything else. I tightened these clamps. I tightened these bolts that hold this pipe, and the ones that hold the loop used to lift the engine. Next, now I'm installing the oil supply to the turbines. Here, one tube goes here and the second one goes here. The first tube is fastened with this kind of bolt. It's a special, interesting bolt. So first it works as a bolt, pressing down one tube. Then it acts as a fitting and the second tube is screwed on top. That's quite an interesting part. Alright, so the turbines are fully installed now. Everything is tightened. The turbines themselves are tightened. Oil drain, supply, everything. I put the cut pipe back for now. New studs are in place and I screwed on new nuts but haven't tightened them yet. Now I'm installing the big pipe. That's what's left for me. The pump, dipstick, a few small things, the starter and mounts. You could say my engine is assembled. This is how it looks right now. Now I'll just attach one new mount and that's basically it. I'm not tightening it yet, so I can adjust it on the spot, move it around to align with the hole, and then tighten it in place. That's it, my engine is ready. So what am I going to do now? Now I'm going to close and seal the hole, connect the diesel fuel, connect the starter and the batteries. So I'll be getting it ready to start. Next, there was a question about the cost. So I'll briefly explain it now. About $350,000 was spent on this engine. I don't have exact records. I'll share what I know. The most expensive part was the piston group for this engine. The piston group cost about 100,000 rubles. Well, give or take, not counting the piston group, about 130,000 rubles were spent on all the other spare parts. Well, give or take. Also, the 350,000 includes a complete pump overhaul. The pump repair cost about 50,000 rubles. It's not that expensive, right? But 50,000 is a lot if you take the fuel pump from the 440-second engine with an electric gas system. Repairing one pump can cost up to 200,000. What other work was done? For example, we sent the cylinder heads for grinding and the connecting rods for machining. Just the heads and rods cost around 10,000 rubles or more. That's it. Send the turbines for inspection and repairs. They were opened, sandblasted and checked, which cost about 10,000 rubles. So it all adds up like this and you end up with this kind of amount. Plus, it would have been easier if they just brought the engine to my workshop already removed. This amount, 350,000, includes all these jobs: removal, installation, and my work on rebuilding the engine. The work we outsourced to third parties, such as those handling cylinder heads, pumps, turbines, and more. Let me repeat, the piston assembly is the priciest spare part, costing over 100,000 rubles. And all the others are somewhere around 120 to 130,000 rubles. All the other spare parts for the entire engine, including compressor repairs and so on. In the comments, you also wrote to me that there's no point in fixing this engine. It's easier to buy a used one. Well, I agree to some extent. For that amount, you can buy a used engine. But again, the question is what kind of engine it will be and what condition it will be in. If you have a reliable supplier who guarantees that this engine will last, if you find such a supplier who will sell it to you with a warranty, then why not? Of course you can, there are cases. People write to me and tell me how they bought used engines. Right, it arrives, let's say, without a compressor or something else. And then they start assembling everything themselves. They consult with me on how to do it. There have been engines that consume oil, so they had to replace the pistons and so on. An old engine is a pig in a poke, so I have no comment and no objection to contract engines. It's all luck, just a pig in a poke. That's just my opinion. Someone might get lucky and drive happily without any problems, but someone else might buy one and regret it 10 times over. That's why it's such a controversial question. One person wrote to me that he bought a contract engine at some auction. He bought a contract engine from Japan, also a 442 engine. He bought it for 350,000. This engine has 8,000 or 8,000 kilometers on it. Yes, that happens sometimes. He bought it from a fire truck, from a ladder truck. Well, obviously, it doesn't have much mileage. This guy just got lucky. If it's that kind of engine, at 350, it's basically new and will keep running. That's why there's no clear answer here, whether to repair, not repair, or buy a used engine. You can repair it, you can buy one. You could even just send your money and end up with neither an engine nor anything at all. There have been cases like that too. So it's a tough question, Everyone has to decide for themselves. All right, next I'm installing the transmission. I'm disengaging the kit. The transmission is installed and all bolts are tight. Now I can disengage the gear. Now I need to push the release bearing into the clutch basket.
Alright, so I use a pry bar to press the release bearing like this. Now I need to fasten the pin. Here is the pin. It serves as a stopper and keeps the release bearing in place. Now it will only move with the clutch fingers. That's it, I fastened it. Now I can't remove the release bearing from the clutch fingers separately anymore. We can see that the release bearing is fixed in place. Now I need to close this small upper hatch.
Alright, I also need to install new mounts, so I'll unpack them now and just put them in loosely. I won't tighten them yet, they'll be tightened later in place on the car. So now my task is to put it on a wooden pallet and set it up. And that's it. After that it will be installed on the car. Alright, so we can see the engine is already installed on the bus.